Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. I welcome Thaddeus McCotter, Congressman Thaddeus McCotter of 11th Michigan, that's Livonia, Western Detroit, watching the approach of the midterms from a state that suffers more than any other, although that it will have a lot of company in the coming months. Detroit's unemployment is heroically bad. The destruction of the car industry over the last 18 months accelerated that problem, but also it now has a state government that's struggling with the fall-off in revenues. Michigan sees as bad as it can be and sees that there is a sky above it. So I go to Congressman McCotter to make sure things are as bad as I think they are. Good evening, Thaddeus. The economic reports over this last week, especially the GDP revision on Friday of the second quarter, points to the great stall in the second half, and unemployment is projected to climb towards 10% again. These numbers were in train for some months. Did you in the Republican House anticipate this poor turn of recovery summer?
Well, John, we were very concerned, as you know, and as we've talked about. When the stimulus was passed, we viewed it as a government bubble that was not going to do anything to fix the underlying problems in the economy. And as we've seen this Democratic-controlled Congress and administration go forward, they've actually exacerbated the underlying problems within the economy, from the health care bill that they passed into the financial regulatory reform that they passed. It did nothing to stop too big to fail. We continue to see their taxing and spending making it more difficult for the American people to fix this economy. And now we're $1 trillion further in the hole because of it. And I think that this is part of an inability to grasp the fundamental concept that the government is not there to recreate the foundations of the American economy. It's there to allow the American people who built that foundation to continue to strengthen it and to grow us out of this mess.
A puzzle, and the public is right to ask this, is how, when you said this to the president in the spring of 2009, how he did not listen, how the Democratic House did not listen. It doesn't help anybody for the Republicans in the House now to say, we told you so. Why didn't they listen? Why were they deaf, that is?
Well, John, there's two parties for a reason. They're fundamentally different views of where our prosperity comes from is one of the differences between us. The Democrats believe that our prosperity comes from the public sector, not the private sector. They believe that the president and the Congress can recreate America's economy into an ideological image that they fancy, and Republicans reject that. So when we talked about trying to strengthen the American economy and making sure that businesses and families kept more of their money and were able to save and start to feel more confident and start to grow our way out of this economy, the Democrats blanched at that. They fundamentally rejected it because they believe that by redistributing the wealth, by taking the $1 trillion stimulus and using it to spend it on their preferred policies, that eventually, when they pass their other policies that to address the underlying problems, that it would work. And what you're seeing is an administration that is absolutely shocked that their approach to managing the economy from Washington has not worked. Now, there are those of us who all along have said we're willing to work with you if you understand that your approach has failed and you take it from a different premise. The principal position that the prosperity comes from the private sector, not the public sector. We'll work with you. So it's not as if we're telling them we told you so. What we're really concerned about is the state of this economy, people who cannot find jobs, people who are still worried about losing their homes. When we are hearing talk about the new normal and unemployment being up around 9% or higher, these are the things that we are focused on trying to ameliorate. We're not simply engaging in partisanship. We would just like someone to work with.
I'm speaking to Thaddeus McCotter of 11th Michigan, and the vice president much speaks of recovery summer. Is this an exercise in hubris on the part of the Democratic administration? Is this their version of mission accomplished from 2003?
Well, John, I think the American people are very practical, very intelligent. And so no matter what the people in Washington say, they're going to judge their economic situation by their family finances, by their employment opportunities, and what they're seeing does not jive with what the administration is saying. So they tend to tune it out, and rightly so. The reality on the ground in our current recessed economy is going to be what people measure this administration of policies by, not by sound bites and not by the vice president running around putting his own interpretation on the facts that matter to real people.
The economy's in trouble, but the Democratic Party now, there's a midterm election. You're fighting your race as you must. Every congressperson fights the race from their CD. But when you speak to generally under the understanding, there are all these wags now, Thaddeus, that are saying that the Republicans are going to take the House, or that there's a likelihood the Republicans were going to take the House. John Boehner is making remarks that point to the fact that he's measuring the drapes. What are the Republicans going to do when and if this is true and they take the House? What is the plan? What is the plan? What are the understandings of the plan for January, if there is one?
Well, I think the one thing that Republicans have to continue to focus on is the fact that no election has been held to give us a majority. And what we have to continue to do is stress the alternatives that we put forward earlier. Over the past 18 months, John, as you know, we put forward our own stimulus plan that relied on people and families keeping their families, businesses, keeping their money. We put forward a common-sense approach to health care that relied on patient empowerment, not on a centralized bureaucracy run out of Washington. We had an all-of-the-above energy strategy to transition us to a green energy future responsibly. These are the issues that are out there. We've always been fighting on the issue of national security and how to make sure the American people are protected. These are the issues that people care about. You add into that transparency in government and making sure that there aren't backroom deals for special amendments to legislation just to get them passed that are unfair to the vast majority of the American people. These are the types of things that have been established by the majority as the issues in the campaign. We've put forward our alternatives, and we will continue to stress not only our opposition to what has been done, but our principled policies and alternatives that we've put forward. So that's what will happen in this election. Now, as for the Republican Party, we also have to remember that it's not simply about being the default option on the ballot. It is about making sure that our policies are put forward in a coherent package to the American people that they can then measure, and in their sovereign citizenship, they can then determine whether or not we're worthy of being entrusted with majority again.
Thaddeus, you had a privilege, few have it. You're a member of the Republican leadership, and all of the Republican leadership was invited to the White House in the spring, late winter, early spring of 2009 to confer with the president and his staff, and you heard their plans, and they went forward with all of their legislation of last year. Did you at that time understand that the president was talking about jobs? Was he bringing it up? Because the reason I ask is Mary Landrieu of his party today went on national television to say, Mr. President, 5 years after Katrina, we're glad you come to New Orleans, but it's jobs we care about. The moratorium that you imposed upon the Gulf, that's what we care about. Was the president talking about jobs in the spring of 2009, Thaddeus?
Well, John, I wasn't at that meeting. I'm number 4 in the House Republican leadership, which means I'm kind of like Ringo. So I didn't make the cut. But when you look at what they're talking about, what Senator Landrieu is talking about, you're seeing the conflict between ideology and reality. Senator Landrieu's reality is that moratorium hurts jobs, hurts her constituents, and yet the president, ideologically, is in a position where he doesn't seem to be concerned with that, or at least is not concerned enough to reverse the moratorium. So what you're going to continue to see out of this administration is a recalcitrance to address reality with practical solutions and instead rely on the ideology to put forward the policies that have actually exacerbated the situation economically.
So the ideologue of the spring of 2000 is the ideologue who was at Xavier University today. Is that consistent, Congressman?
I think it's consistent, and I also think what you're seeing consistently is the inability to empathize with a lot of the suffering that's going out there, and we saw that in Detroit when they went on date night before the auto industry went into bankruptcy.
Thaddeus McCotter, 11th Michigan, running for re-election in the 11th Michigan and the midterm in weeks. I'm John Batchelor. This is